Okay, let's go. Day 2 back at the fucking apartment. About time. Okay, last time. What were we doing last time? Were we still in deleting functions? I guess we were, huh? We're doing function overloads on 11.3 and then deleting functions on 11.4. And we're saying, and we're preventing calls with specific signatures. So if you're calling it with these arguments, we're disallowing that. But you're calling it with those arguments, cool. And the reason is to prevent valid calls that lead to unwanted behavior, from being called. So we have to somehow invalidate them. Okay, 11.4. Oh, we did go to default arguments. So what did I do yesterday? We did something about like a planet, and it was like get planet or get time. So we could have a function called so we need input and output here. I don't think we need to transitively do it, but we'll find out. So if we're outputting get time, this by default should be print Earth's time. Time. Default planet time. Okay. And I could have a function called time. If not defined, time h, defined time h. And if. I don't know what I like more. Do I like end if? I guess I do like enter and then up. But then it leaves that extra line versus end if. I guess that's better. Let's try it again. End if, escape, up, cool. Or we could do end if, boom. Okay, that'll work. And we could have namespace time. And we could have a function called void get time. We're not doing any overloads right now, but we are doing default arguments. So we're going to include string. What if we did a standard string? That way I could pass it a standard string instead of having to expensively give it a string. But if I initialize the standard string with the default argument, I wonder what happens. Let's just do string view and see. And then we could have standard string view, planet, or we'll say target planet. We pass it the target planet, or just pass it a planet, and then we initialize it to be Earth. This is a warning? Why? I'm not sure. What happens if we compile? What is it saying? Oh, there's just no... Hold on. Identifier not found? What do you mean? Oh, that's just an error in main. That's fine. Okay. And now let's initialize. Let's actually do the implementation. Include time.h to resolve any compiler or any return type mismatch at the compiler level instead of the linker, and then we'll say return. Let's see. We'll say so by default it's Earth, and then we can say I can't do cases as a switch because okay, so we would need to do if. Yeah, because switch cases have to use integral values, non-floats too, so even more restrict. Well, no, yeah, just integral values. So I think we say if planet is Earth, then return, oh, and this should be returning, that's the hard part. Are we just returning a standard string, but then we're converting from a string view to it? What happens if we just say string view and we're returning well, aren't we returning, we're returning something of Earth, so actually I guess we'll just do int, returning an int. It's not a const expression function because this isn't known at compile time. We can have some constants in here that we want to return. So we could say like, just pretend the time isn't changed. Or let's say this is like getting the time offset. So like the something something CT, whatever it is, not CTE, the like +4 UTC or +5 or whatever, depending on where you are. So there's some universal time, and then Earth is like, Earth is 0, it's the base. But then Mars is something else. So we could have const expression int, and I don't want to access this anywhere. I'm kind of encapsulating it. I'm saying, hey, there's a const expression int, and I can only get it by calling a function that returns it. So Earth time, and we initialize it to be 0, and then const expression int Mars time. We'll say it's 2. Const expression int Jupiter time, and let's say it's 10. Okay, and then we return Earth time. Else if planet is Mars, return Mars time. Else, and then we'll just say else return Jupiter. Actually, no. Let's hand it. Else if planet is Jupiter. Why is there a backslash there? Return Jupiter time. And then finally, else return 777. Or we could just assert to handle the case. So I could do a code like that, or if the player is only allowed to choose one of these planets, I could just do, I could include C assert, and then we could assert planet is Earth, or planet is Mars, or planet is Jupiter. Oh shit. Why was it giving so many? I guess it just hadn't, I was doing stuff fast enough where it couldn't catch up. Okay. And we're asserting this, and then in this case we can just say else return Jupiter time. Okay? Hold on. Nine. Redefinition. What do you mean? Time get time. Redefinition of default argument. I mean, these match. Is it that, so I've included it here. Is that the problem? We don't want to do it in this guy? So if we just do this, then what happens? Oh, maybe that's the solution. We want to, so we're calling this function. Compiler just knows that this guy's valid when we include time into here when we call it. But really, it has a default argument in here. You wouldn't know that from here. Has default argument. All right, we'll just say planet, sure. Is this cool? This is still cool, okay. And now we can include time.h. And now this is in time get time. And the problem here is it's seeing that this guy, oh, it's not, well, see, it needs to, that's the problem. The default arguments, so if I put the default arguments in both, does it have to be like a const expression function where it has to be defined in this file, meaning it either has to be an inline function, it has to be a candidate for inline expansion. And the reason I don't want everything to be inline is because it increases compile time. It's like, I bet you if I... Illegal for class? What do you mean? Oh. So it's saying 0, and if we say nothing, then it should say whatever Jupiter's value is, 10. Oh, it's an assert because, oh yeah, duh. I forgot that we're capturing this, so it actually needs to be Jupiter because we're handling invalid planet cases. And this should be assert invalid planet choice. Okay. So we'll do Jupiter for 10, and then Mars for 2. Cool. The problem is that the default argument isn't working here. Why? Because the compiler is saying, yo, this motherfucker needs a parameter. Excuse me. In reality, it has a default argument. So I'm wondering if we take all of this and paste her in here. We don't need to resolve that anymore. We don't need... So we'll put these constants in here. And the reason we would make them inline is so that we don't have individual copies. So sure, we can do inline for each of these. And then let's just say get time has default argument, and then we don't need the namespace part again. And then sure, I could have like another I could have another namespace, but we'll just say there's time, and it has these, and it also has this function. So there's getting a planet's time, and then there are the constants. What the fuck happened just now? Did I? Oh, I put an apostrophe somehow. Okay. But now it's cool. So it's that, and by default, it's doing Earth. So even though, and the reason is, oh hey, I'm in my fucking spaceship and I didn't specify the specific planet. Well, the universal time is Earth because Earth is the planet from which humans came from, allegedly. So it defaults to that. But I could specify Earth, I could specify Mars or Jupiter, and those are the only valid planets because whatever. Fucking explosions destroyed the rest, or who knows. Whatever. It's just that for default arguments, they have to be... The compiler has to see the default argument. And just like we can't redefine a variable within the same scope, we can't redefine a parameter in the same scope. So if I had time forward declared here and then defined here, but in both cases I'm defining a variable within it, I mean, would I can't link them because they're local. They're both in the same scope. And inline just tells the... I don't think inline helps us here. Because we're talking about a local variable. I think inline only works for the for constant or for. I mean, what happens? What happens if we copy this over back here? Include time.h, and then we remove this. Then we simply for declare it. Redefinition of the parameter. Yes. Parameter 1. So it doesn't name it by 0 either. It says 1. But what if we... Would it matter? I don't think it would. Yeah. You can't have that specifier. Cannot appear on a function parameter. Inline can only be on a global one. And the point is so multiple files that have access to the same scope. Yeah, because in a function, another file can't access, nothing outside of a function can access the variable within that function. So another, even if we're talking about the same function, we can't have two x's in a function and define them both and just make them inline and say, oh, whoop-de-doo. No, inline, the point of that is saying, oh, duh, and inline, the point of inline is that you have exact, identical definitions across locations. So everywhere it's defined, it's identical. And we're saying, hey, instead of making individual copies of this guy, a const expression variable on all these files, and then having all these different spaces in memory for those individual little copies, or wasting memory, it should just be one instance, but instead we're getting multiple. We make it inline, and it says, the linker says, this one place. That is where the info is, and all these places pull it from there, instead of having their own individual copies. But here it won't work, so I think we're going to read something here that says that default arguments, or, I mean, you could say default parameter, right? I mean, I guess you say it's a default argument so that when you call it, you don't have to specify it. I like default parameter better, honestly, because it's a parameter that is initialized by default, so when you call it, you don't have to initialize it. You can just call it empty. Or if it's an int and then an initialized float, a default float, you can just call it with the int and then leave the float because it's a default parameter. But okay, fine, I guess they're called default arguments. Is a default value per... Why the fuck is it called a default argument? I don't. The default value provided for a function parameter. Excuse me. And now the point is, you can't call this without specifying x. But you don't have to specify y. You can say to 2, so print to 2, and the second 2 will override y. But you can also just say print 2, and it will say 2, 10. You can optionally do it. How far do we get? Not far. Caller can optionally provide an argument for any function parameter that has a default argument. How long have we been going? 18 minutes, okay. So we've got, oh, so I started at 4:30, so this goes till 6. Okay, so we go till 6, and then I play more Death Stranding. This game is amazing. And then after, I'll play, I don't know, I'll play like an hour or two. And then at 8, or maybe 7, we'll do the self-test. Because I don't want to do these I don't want to do these together. I don't want to read and learn information and then boom, immediately get tested. I want to learn the information, wait, and let the brain integrate the information by me just doing some other shit. And the brain takes the extra space, the extra room in the brain to store the info. And then I test myself to lock the info in. Because if I just do this and then I test myself right after, I feel like when I was wrong about things, I noticed it most, and it's been long lasting when I knew something over time and then corrected that. So it's something that was already in the brain and that got corrected. It's not like I feel like I'd be more likely to remember someone's actual name if I learned their name, thought about their name, and it was in my brain, and then days later confidently called them by the name and I got it wrong then, instead of me getting the name right, or getting the name, and then in that first conversation of learning the name, getting the name wrong and then getting corrected. I feel like it's not as, the name wasn't locked in. The knowledge comes when you correct, like when you get it wrong harshly. Something like that. Okay. Making a function call, we can optionally, the caller can optionally provide an argument that has a default argument. Yeah, so we don't have to provide an argument for a function parameter that has a, so we say that a parameter has a default argument. 10 is the default argument, meaning that when we call it, the call automatically provides the default argument. We don't have to say it. We're saying it here. Like, it's like speed dial on my phone. If I go on my phone and I press call 2 times, the first call button will input the last number that I called, and the second call button will call it. In my phone, we're saying, hey, I can specify a specific number and call it, or I can just call it without specifying, and I will still call whatever number's on speed dial. So if I happen to know that I want the number that's already on speed dial, I don't have to put Y. I can just put X and be done. But if I want to make sure that I'm calling the right number, maybe I don't do speed dial, because maybe I forgot what number's on speed dial. Or maybe I want to call a different number. Therefore, I can't call it on speed dial. I have to put it in myself. Oh, it's raining. It's time fall. Holy shit. If the caller provides an argument, the value of the argument, the value of the argument in the call is used. If we don't, the value in the signature or in the default argument is used. Either way. Consider this program. Okay. We are printing 1 and 2. So we are initializing this guy with 1 and this guy with 2. Okay. Or if we just specify 3, we will do 3 and 4. Yes. It's kind of, oh. So maybe that's something that's done in Unreal Engine. Like, if you call the function that's called getPlayerCharacter and it returns the global variable that is the character. Excuse me. When you call getPlayerCharacter, it has a default argument of saying character 0 for getPlayerController, something like that. getPlayerCharacter, I guess. Yeah, I think there are different numbers for that. So, but the default is 0. So if I just call getPlayerCharacter, I get 0. Well, as long as there's one player in the game, we get the correct one. But if there are multiple people, I don't want to use the default argument. I want to explicitly call 1, getPlayerCharacter 1 to get the next one. So player 2. Player 1 compared to player 0. Cool. Yeah, so we can omit default arguments if we want the default value. Equal sign. We can't use parentheses or brace. Okay. No director list. Surprisingly, they're handled by the compiler at the call site. I mean, it makes sense because the compiler knows what the value is. Therefore, at the call, it should swippy swappy. It just updates this in there. Yeah, when the compiler sees print 3, it says, hey, the user is omitting the second parameter or the second and after parameters. Well, let's replace them. Let's replace the call with those. That way, in the source code, there's no intuition. The compiler is where the deduction and shit happens, where it can guess and replace shit. But the source, or not the source code, the machine code needs to say exactly what the fuck's going on. Compiler is just a tool that allows us to be a little more. We don't have to specify as much. It can do some interpretation or abstraction. There's a gnat. Makes sense. Default arguments are inserted by the compiler at the function call. That way, when in binary we see the function call, boom, it has the right amount of parameters. If that's even how binary works. Frequently used, and you'll see them a lot. Interesting. A function needs a value but has a reasonable default value. Like, maybe you pass a function. Oh, like we can have a function that uses, or, well, if a function already uses if a function uses gravity and it's the only thing that uses it, and we don't want gravity to be used anywhere else, fuck it. Instead of a constant, we can just define gravity as a parameter, and we can give it a default initialization value or default argument value of 9.8 or 9.82. But if the user wants to be even more specific, he or she can call the function and specifically put in a more specific value to overwrite what gravity says, or what value gravity gets. Okay. Just checking to see if the outer side of my glasses are fuzzy or not. Yeah, so for example, if we're on our spaceship, oops, and we just want to get time, odds are we're talking about Earth time. But on the event that we don't, and we don't want to use that reasonable value, we can get a specific one. We can specify a different value. Roll a die, and maybe by default you want the sides to be 6, but you might do roll die 20, and then sides is 20, and then sides is passed to a uniform int distribution for the upper range of a Mersenne Twister's value to be converted to. Open log file is a standard string file name, and maybe by default our log file is called default.log. But maybe we want to call the alternate.log. Excuse me. Ooh, an optional parameter? Something feels weird about that. I mean, it shouldn't be an optional parameter because odds are the parameter is probably getting used. But we don't necessarily have to specify it as an argument. I'd rather it just be called an optionally initialized parameter, or an optionally called, an optionally initialized. Oh, it's initialized by default. Interesting. I don't really like calling it an optional parameter. Of course, there's some ambiguity going on. It's also used to refer to several other types of parameters. Parameters passed by an address can be optional as well. Parameters using standard optional? What the fuck is standard optional? No idea. Okay, yeah. I don't like optional parameter. They're also useful if we need to add a new parameter to an existing function. Oh, meaning that the function already exists and there are calls in our code that are already calling it. Well, if I add a new parameter, I then have to update all those fucking calls. But assuming those calls don't need to use different values of the default parameter or the default argument, I like default parameter. Well, I can put in the new parameter, give it a default argument value, and then boom, all those calls are still good. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what he's getting at. If we add it, yes. It will break all existing calls because we didn't go in and update each one of them. Yes. A lot of updating existing calls, and it may not be possible if you don't own the calling code. Meaning, I'm a guy on a team, another person's got another guy on a team, and then he's got the code that's calling my function, and I'm like, ah, fuck. We need to update the value so it's returned more accurately, and in doing so I have to add this extra parameter. Fuck, if I add this parameter, then all the calls are gonna be busted. But if I do the if I add the parameter and give it a default argument, we're cool. Okay. So it's not giving a function a default argument, it's giving a parameter a default argument. So it's when you call it, the parameter assumes that you want it to be this. When you get on the dating app and you're looking for a lady, you assume that you want one under 35 because you want kids or something. That's the default argument. That makes sense. Okie doker. Yep, the calls will still work. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Cool. Yep, and then other calls later on, we can go and specify specific values if needed. Cool. Yeah, so I could add it, and oh, those calls are getting values that aren't right. Well, now I can update those calls. Or I can update the default argument. Cool. Can have multiple. Yeah, for example, we could have, what would be a good example? Like, maybe you have a default grocery list. Like, let's say you have a game, and in this game, you have to order groceries periodically. Well, at some point, maybe you have the ability to update the function to use default arguments. That way, you can just order groceries, and the shit comes as you already needed it. So, we can have... Cool. We get time going on. Or let's get a header file going on. Let's just get groceries. Well, in this case, we're going to have to do inline functions, but it is what it is. Namespace, groceries. Groceries. Okay. And we will say void place order. Okay, and in this case we'll make it inline so we can include it in multiple spots and not just use it in one file because it's in global scope. If we do it in multiple files, well, what would happen? We would be breaking the one definition rule because it would see identical signatures of the same function in multiple files in the same namespace. Because it would say, hey, one file's updating the namespace to have this. Another one's doing it, same shit. Ooh, you're breaking the one definition rule, buddy, but if we do inline, it's okay. So, in here, we will include standard string. And actually we did a standard string view. Oh, what am I fucking doing, dude? String view. Okay. And we'll do, well, yeah, we'll do standard string view. Standard string view, please. String view, grocery 1 is 1 apple. Standard string view, grocery 2, or we could just say item 1, item 2 is 2 apple pies. And standard string view, item 3 is 2 pounds chicken. Ooh. 2 pounds chicken. Okay. And it's void, it's an inline function, it returns nothing, and all it does is it outputs our order. Okay. And now we'll say output ordered item 1, this, item 2, and item 3. Cool. So we can now include groceries and then groceries place order. And by default, we ordered an apple, 2 pies, and what the fuck? Oh, looks like 21, but it's not. Yeah, fuck it, grammar, it's fine, we can do it. Of chicken, cool, don't even compile, just run it. Alright, cool. Or, we could do 3 cakes, 2 buckets of ice cream, and fuck it, we'll just leave it as default. What happens if we do that? Oh, it's expecting an operand on the right side. In this case, we still get 2 pounds of chicken, but we also get 3 cakes and 2 buckets of ice cream for some big back. Big back, big back. Wait, who was singing Big Back? Yes. Alright, this is terrible. Alright. Yeah, so we can have multiple. Cool. Yo, yo, yo. Drop my fucking bottle. Okie doker. So we could say explicit, or we could say 2 explicit, 1 default, 1 explicit, 2 default, all default. Cool. It's the same shit I just did. It does not support a function call syntax like that. What the fuck? Oh. What? What are you talking about? If there are 2 default, oh fuck, that's why. So if there's a function call, and let's say we're just calling it and we're just passing it where the fuck we are. Well, no. Let's do time. Get time and get date. So by default, it gets the Earth's date, or the Earth's time, but maybe you have to specify the date. Well, I can't say use the default Earth time and then pass in today's date, because that would mean just calling it with just today's date, which would mean it's trying to initialize the first argument with today's date, and now it's going to think, yo, you're overriding Earth time, or overriding the time, default argument for time, which is Earth time, with a date. No bueno. So the default arguments have to be the rightmost ones for us to update stuff explicitly on the left. So if we want to use explicit shit and default shit, the explicit shit needs to be on the left. If the default shit is on the left, I can't use the default on the left and update on the right. I can't say, yeah, the explicit ones must be the leftmost. Yes. I can't say, oh, I want 20 and well, I can say 20 and 30, so I just call it to update 10. But I can't say use 10 and 20, so I'm going to call the function print 40. No, it's going to print 40, 20, 30. It's not going to print 10, 20, 40. So we have to call it properly. I don't like that, but it is what it is. With defaults, we can't skip them. We can't say, hey, you hold on, and then do that one. Excuse me. So for example, we have a string view for hello. This is a C-style string that exists somewhere in memory, and we're using a view to it, and it exists, okay? So we can still use it, and it's cool. And then double is 10, so both of these are like this. I can't just pass in 43. Yes, exactly. I can't just pass in 20, because it's going to say, hey, you're using 20 instead of a string view. Yo. So we can print nothing, or we can update the string view, but we can't just update the double and use the default. If we update something on the right, we have to do the rest. So explicitly provided ones must be the leftmost ones. Let's give a root. If a parameter is given a default argument, all ones to the right must be given default arguments. Cool. Yes. And it's exactly for that reason. So I can't say override this guy and use this guy. This actually seems like it prevents that. So I can't say, hey, default this guy and specialize this guy, and then explicitly want this guy. Because if I call it with just y, I'm skipping this guy. If a parameter has a default argument, all subsequent parameters must have default arguments. That way, we can say the explicit ones must, i.e., the explicit ones must be on the left side. We can do y, x is 10. We can't do x is 10, y. If more than one, the leftmost should be the one most likely to be set by the user. Why? Because if one later is the most likely to be explicitly set, so let's say there are 3 arguments, and it's pretty common that I just want to update one of them. If it's the left, then we're good. I can just update the left one, we're solid. But if it's very common that I have to update the one on the right, and only that one, I have to explicitly specify the ones on the left in order to access and update the one on the right. Makes sense? Yes. Once declared, so if we have it in a CPP file, and we declare it, that's where the redefinition comes from. We have a for declaration in the CPP file in which it's defined, and the for declaration defines the default argument, but then later on the definition defines the default argument. No, sir. We're gonna go to the bathroom soon, I can feel it. Cannot be redeclared in the same translation unit. Big back, big back. Okay. For a function with a for declaration and definition, the default argument can be declared in either or. However, that's on the same file. If we are defining it in one file and declaring it in another, well, the compiler is not going to allow calls. Oh, so that would mean the definition would be the one that couldn't have the default argument, right? And the for declaration would be the one that could. So if we did time, well, let's say just say if not defined name h, define name h, and if namespace name, okay, and then we'll say void get name. Include standard string view. And we'll say standard string view name is Ethan. Okay, this is in the declaration. Default argument in the declaration. I don't know why I was saying standard. This should just be string view like that. Cool. Yeah, there's no definition, right? Yeah, it's fine. Name, include name.h. I mean, really, I shouldn't do that. Cool. But here, we cannot redeclare. Okay. What is, are we, okay, what's happening? Oh, this is, we need IOStream 2. Okay. Okay, and then we'll say, and really this should be print name. So this is okay. It's not like an inline function where it must be defined. Well, actually, it is. If we want to use default arguments in a file, well, the compiler needs to see that there's a default argument in the call to allow you to call it with a default argument. However, your CPP file, when you look at it, will not show it. Sure, you'll be including your header file to resolve return type discrepancies and return type mismatches. So if you saw it after compilation, you would see that your declaration has a default argument. But it's probably worth noting. Name's default argument is Ethan. Cool. Boom. So if you print name, you'll get Ethan. But we could also do, what we could do, boom. Holy. Boom, boom. I gotta pee.